Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Aesop Rock, finally called The Impossible Kid. So when I covered Kevin Morby last week, I mentioned that much of the wordplay I tend to prefer is intricate and layered, at least trying a little harder than bog standard metaphors trying and failing for universality. And with rare exception, you take a look at my favorite albums of any given year, that focus on lyricism has led to certain records landing on the list that push the gauntlet lyrically, but might not be as innovative in some of their musicality and sound. Or if they are, it's in subtle ways that serves and complements the writing. But that's not saying I don't have my limit on the other extreme, the songs that weave such tangled webs of words that clawing through any specific meaning that is a twisted nightmare in and of itself. And that's not even counting the writers who focus more on impressionist poetry over direct meaning. To me, this material draws a lot of curiosity, but the bizarre thing is that it can be a little bit emotionally distancing. When you get so focused on untangling what's being said, you can lose all the heart of it. And that was my biggest fear before I started delving into Aesop Rock, the veteran MC who is known for having the biggest vocabulary in hip-hop music with a considerable discography and reportedly impenetrable albums. Not only was I concerned about verbosity and so many words adding up to a lot less than expected, but that I would lose the emotional core of the music. Fortunately, with so much hype on the internet, this didn't happen. It's been a hugely rewarding experience to revisit Aesop Rock's discography in full, complete with all the eccentric production choices, oddball lyrical knots, and records that might all run kinda long, but have a strong enough emotional core to hold all of my attention. Sure, the music's gonna require a little bit of work to decode, but no more so than Joanna Newsom or Uncommon NASA or any other singer-songwriter with an eye for detail. And unlike a rap act like Shabazz Palace's who can get lost in their own impenetrability, Aesop Rock's songs tend to have a point that will crystallize if you choose to take the time to dig into them. So yeah, I was definitely curious to check out his newest solo release, 4 years after the critically acclaimed, for good reasons, Skeleton in 2012, which I placed in my upper tier of Aesop Rock records just below Labor Days and maybe a smidge above Float. And considering that his production has only gotten more layered and complex, and Buzz was suggesting that this might be Aesop Rock's most specific and direct release to date, which is a good thing, because even if he can slip down into the lyrical rabbit hole, I was genuinely thrilled to dig into this. So, what do we get? Well, I have to be honest with you all, I've been sitting on this review for more than a few days now, probably about a week, and not because the album is impenetrable to the point where I needed that extra time to decode it. No, in this case, it's more trying to deconstruct where I feel this album ultimately lands in the spectrum of great Aesop Rock records. Yeah, I know it's great, a layered, compelling, hard-hitting listen that's obviously going to be getting a recommendation from me, but does it hit me deeply enough for me to say it's one of the best albums of the year? Well, let's find out, and fair warning, this review probably will get just as convoluted as a lot of the lyrics. Actually, I'm not really sure I can make that statement in the way that I could about previous Aesop Rock records. The buzz wasn't lying, as this is probably one of Aesop Rock's most immediately accessible records to date in terms of hooks and storytelling, to the point where you can fairly quickly grasp what's going on or what Aesop Rock is talking about. Even in terms of song structure, this record has a lot more momentum than I expected, as it's one of his shortest projects to date. He's made EPs longer than this album, but I'd argue that's a good thing, because not only does it keep the production diverse, but it enables Aesop Rock to stay pointed and on topic while still maintaining the layered complexity for which he's famous. The vocabulary is still immense, even I found myself going to a dictionary a fair few times, but the flow is so good and the mood is so well realized that you can easily get the gist without having to go that deep. And there definitely is a point to this increased focus, where thematically much of Skeleton seemed to have Aesop Rock retreating into a tightly woven knot of his own creation. The Impossible Kid takes the opposite trajectory and finds Aesop Rock actively trying to engage with the world as he peels through layers of complicated emotion. And here's the thing, Aesop Rock sketches out such a complete and detailed world and character that simply having him react and contextualize the modern world around him can make for some great material, both dramatic and comedic. Take the observations surrounding my generation on Lotta years, where he sees our colorful brand of self-expression with both exasperation and envy. For him, that sort of expression took time and commitment, whereas my generation tend to treat it with superficiality, and he envies that nonchalance. Or take Shrunk, where he reluctantly squares off against a psychiatrist who can see through his obfuscation, and while he has a certain amount of disgust for the entire scene, he is gonna try and come back. And of course, right after that, we've got Kirby, a song lionizing his kitten who helped break through his internal barriers when therapy and medication didn't work. And of course, you got a few songs like Dorks and Lazy Eye and Tough, which shows Aesop Rock coming to grips with his own peculiar quirks and idiosyncrasies, which allows him to be more confident in his own lane and not even waste time slagging hip-hop that's more concerned with flossing than art. And what I really love about Aesop Rock is that he's not playing any of these tracks for comedy, he's just so damn witty and his delivery is so expressive that it comes through naturally. And if this is the the underlying melancholy that he's trying to process and deal with on this album. And make no mistake, there is a lot to unpack there. Rings reflects on his failures in visual art and his guilt for losing track of his passions there. And Rabies goes into his isolationist streak and frustration with his lack of place, a theme that runs through most of this album. Much of this seems to be rooted in grief that he feels for his loss of his longtime friend Kamutao, who died from lung cancer 8 years ago and who Aesop is still processing on songs like Get Out of the Car. You can tell that Aesop Rock is trying to make peace with the idea of death on songs like Water Tower, where he doesn't romanticize suicide so much as he sees a comfort in his body decomposing to create new life. A morbid moment, sure, but this record doesn't romanticize death or misery. Again, Aesop Rock sees the significance like the death of the gopher on the younger brother's baseball game, or the Ministry concert that his mom wouldn't let his older brother attend, even though that older brother professes he would die to see them. But it's placed in the context of a song where he's reconnecting with his brothers, sharing life in the face of a possible death, in that case potentially his own. But where the themes come together most and coalesce is on Molecules, a track about displacement, not just in location but in hip-hop culture itself, and with respect to an audience who only seems to listen when he's at his lowest moment. And it raises a powerful point. This is an album that focuses more than ever on recovery, rehabilitation, coming back into the world, and yet the fear that it would drive away those who crave angst and confusion leaves Aesop Rock wondering whether the only place society sees high art or cares at all about him is in the torture and death of the artist itself. It's not a rational fear, and Aesop Rock knows that, but in speaking to the authentic emotion in an irrational and all the more superficial society, I can really understand the fear of getting better, especially if it would come at the sake of the art being received by anyone at all. Of course, none of that would matter here if the music didn't deliver, and wow, it definitely does. Although on some level, I won't always say that Aesop Rock's production is as varied and complex as the lyricism. These aren't LP beasts. And hell, some moments where the production actually had the most impact is when it pulled back to just atmosphere to emphasize a point, like in the hook of Shrunk or Dorks or Blood Sandwich. But there is density in the melodic layering courtesy of the synth and guitars. And I really like the moments where he brought in horns for melodic accents and punctuation, like on Mystery Fish or Rabies, or like how that organ on Supercell in the very beginning established the eeriness that'd be echoed by that choppy but instantly recognizable hook that sounded like it had a theremin tone running through it. Now there are points where I think the hooks are a little bit clumsy. Rings is the biggest example, as the cadence and synths on the hooks feel a little bit too slow to really flow off the verse as well. But on the other hand, you get the bounce of Kirby or the fuller alien synths of Lazy Eye, or the places where it sounds like we get a live bass guitar line, like on Lotta Years against the bouncy counter melody in the keyboard, or the mournful interplay with the guitar and piano and Get Out of the Car, or on Molecules, where I'd swear the bass picks up the cadence to match the pattern of the low synth line in an interesting parallel. And a lot of the synth picks up some great texture too. The whirring cascades on Mystery Fish, the plucky keys on Blood Sandwich, and the low royal on Shrunk that I really like. I will say that I did find some of the drum pickups a little bit too lo-fi to blend in with the mix entirely, a little bit too dusty or have as much punch. And there are a few grooves that don't quite get as much momentum, Tough and Water Tower in particular. But to contrast, the sampling was awesome. In particular, that MIDI loop that opens up Lazy Eye, I can swear comes from a Star Wars DOS game I played as a kid. I really like that. I guess if I was nitpicking even further, I would say that Aesop Rock's voice could do a little bit more to fit in better with the atmosphere. The synth blending was really good, but there are points where the vocal line sits on top of the mix rather than within it. But again, I'm really nitpicking here. And to bring it all together, the more I think about this album, the more I find myself liking it, but it's also one of those albums where I'm hesitant about overpraising it. The wordplay is goddamn superb. The thematic execution is top of the line. But there are a few too many production missteps for me to say that's really one of the best of the year across all genres. Lyrically, it got there, but musically, it's a shade short. It doesn't really grip me that deeply there. And even if that, I'd be lying if I say there weren't a couple lyrical detours. They might be briefer than ever, but don't feed into a stronger thematic resonance. So for me, I'm thinking an extremely strong 8 out of 10 and a very high recommendation. If you're looking for hard-hitting, incredibly lyrical hip-hop, well, you probably already heard this album, but if you haven't, check it out. This is the sort of music that demands your support. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I will try to give them a listen. And I got the poll up here, so let's be honest, is this just a great album or one of the best of the year? I'm curious in your opinions. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.